Hello, this is the first part of the fascism video that we're gonna go over right now. And we're not gonna go over it in a great detail that we would if there was school. So we're gonna focus on some stuff, and with the others, we're not gonna do it in a tremendous detail, just because there's not enough time or class time and all that. Okay. But overall, you guys already know that when it comes to fascism, that it's all about that extreme nationalism and extreme inequality. Some of it you already know from Social 20 as well, right? So dictatorship, huge social fragmentation. Some people are great. Some people basically should be killed, right? Okay. Um, and then fascism and communism have some similarities that we're going to go over in more detail tomorrow, and they have some differences as well. Okay. For now, let's just take a look at the characteristics of fascism. There's 14 different ones. So, again, if this was the actual school, we'd go through them in more detail. Now we're just going to go through them a little bit faster, especially because none of these are actually a part of your assignment. So it's very nationalistic. It wants to instill that feeling of belonging constantly to your great nation and a great race. In a fascist case as well, it's not just about the nation; it's about the race too. Um, then obviously they are not very much into human rights, especially for those races that are deemed lower races or the ones that should be eliminated, right? Um, they always identify enemies, scapegoats. So again, it's very often racial, but not necessarily. It can be other types of minorities, whether it's religious ones, could be political ones, could be even health-based, if people with disabilities, for example, are targeted, and so on. Um, there's the issue of supremacy as well. So in the society, there are some people who are just like really important, like let's say soldiers, for instance, politicians, obviously, right? So, thinking back to Animal Farm, who would that be? Like pigs, dogs, those are the superior elements of society. Um, as opposed to communism that was promoting gender equality, in fascism, it was not like that. It was more so conservative traditional gender roles. Women were there to bear a lot of children, and men were there to be great soldiers, and gays were about to be eliminated, and all those things, right? So it was way, way more sexist. Um, Obviously, mass media, like in any dictatorship, this was characteristic for communism too, was controlled, censored, right? National security was always a factor, right? So there were always those enemies that needed to be eliminated. So remember, after the Treaty of Versailles, after World War One, right? There was that feeling that there's a whole bunch of enemies who wants to threaten and destroy Germany, right? So it's all about securing the national interests of Germany. Um, Religion, and in this particular case, as opposed to communism, it was not that persecuted, but still it would be considered that you trust your government first, and then only possibly your religious leaders as well. um, Fascism, as compared to communism, actually allowed some capitalism. So corporate power was there, but the idea was that it always works kind of like in order to benefit the goals of the nation and the government. Okay. And then the government might help them as well. So that was kind of the idea there, the exchange. Like kind of Volkswagen, for example, during the war, prospered because the government sent some Jewish slaves essentially to work in their factories. So, cheap labor, obviously, right? So, why did they do that? Because Volkswagen was also collaborating with the government and helping the government by delivering some of the products that the government needed. So there's always that relationship. Capitalism is okay, but as long as it serves the purposes of, benefiting the government and the great nation and all that. When it comes to labor, it's seen as a threat, right? As something that's communist, right? As something that's leftist, as something that's unruly, protests and all that. None of that is allowed in fascism. I just, you know, follow your leader, and that's basically it. Intellectuals, arts were also seen as fairly dangerous because they were seen as decadent, as, like their ideas are also like way too liberal, right? So the state, to tackle that, was actually attacking them a lot, and saying that they're just corrupting society with their ideas, with their liberal attitude, with their decadence, that it's all bad and all that. Elections, as you guys remember, Hitler came to power via elections, but normally when it comes to fascist governments in general, because Hitler banned elections after that, but here we're kind of like discussing any type of fascist government. Sometimes they will hold elections, but it's going to be a complete fraud, and they're usually going to get like 99.9% of the votes, which obviously is a complete fraud because everything is going to be rigged. Crime punishment is a huge deal. This is one factor that can be positive though as well, because they're not big fans of any type of criminal. So very often in their society, like petty crime is really down. Uh, but then they also punish what in other countries would not be seen as crime as well, and that obviously is usually an issue. And then obviously corruption is a huge deal. That's the case in communism as well. Thinking back to Animal Farm, you saw how many times pigs were participating in that, right? So yeah, just not the same rules apply to us that apply to everybody else. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. That type of attitude. And this one I'm gonna talk about in fascism number 2 video.